Before you watch this video, I believe a bit of context is required, especially if you did not watch my Why No One Uses video for Oni's perks. Unlike with my typical schedule of working on one video script at a time, I decided to work on Oni and Spirit's videos together because of their connection with the Yamaoka bloodline. As such, there is a bit of overlap between the two, specifically with the introduction of that video and how I discuss behavior's handling of the two Yamaokas. That being said, this is not a major requirement for you to enjoy this video, but if you are curious to hear about that topic, or about Oni's perks in general, I recommend checking it out. With all of that out of the way, let's get back to talking about Spirit. Of every single killer within the game, Spirit has always been a bit of a mixed bag for me. On one hand, she is a very cool interpretation of an Onryo from Japanese mythology, and her execution really pushes that to the forefront with animations and sound effects. Her whimpering followed by a vengeful scream, and then followed by painful gasps, help to paint the story of her base lore incredibly well, especially of the night when she died and turned into a vengeful spirit. Additionally, her power too feels perfect for the role, as her hands look like she is lunging her way towards her victim, all the while blinding her to who the target actually is. Additionally, her passive phasing in and out of reality matches with her corporeal feeling, helping to solidify her identity as a ghost. It is all great from a thematic standpoint, but unlike her older generation counterpart of Oni, her balance has always been exceptionally infamous. Not only did she have some of the most busted add-ons within Dead by Daylight's history, but she also tends to have many audio bugs with certain cosmetics that makes it harder to detect where she is, which also doesn't help the players who can barely even detect her while she is phasing by default. Then there's also her infamous mind game trick, where her phase used to not have an audio cue while survivors were inside her terror radius, allowing her to stand perfectly still at pallets and windows and make players wonder if she is in power or not. These are all moments that forever cement themselves within the character, and what makes things worse is the fact that it took behavior quite literally years to resolve most of these problems. Granted, with a few of the issues, I am sure players were very happy to wait them out. Speaking about that particular bug, where are Spirit's clothes? I get that she's an Onryo and they wanted to style her in a different way compared to the usual white dress, but could you not have given her casual school or work attire? At this point, I get why her father whipped out the katana, because only a crazy person is wearing bandages around their house, and even I'm not that crazy. Another point to mention is that unlike Oni, who somehow has some of the most chill players I have ever met, Spirit players are on the competitive grind in a casual game, and they have spent every penny possible to fetch headphones that allow them to hear the literal corners of the universe. I wonder what's going on out there. No matter, let's get back to the real content. Oh yeah, show that poser who's the real Wizard Vecna. Joking aside though, we are not here to bash on Spirit players or the character herself, at least not too much. Instead, this video is targeted at her perks. As I stated in the Oni video, both Oni and Spirit have some of the strongest thematically designed perks I have ever seen within the game, but what separates them quite nicely is how they present those thematics. Oni as a killer is someone who does have anger issues, if you couldn't tell from his power, but his perks show a level-headed amount of control with his anger, helping to enhance those aspects. Spirit, on the other hand, is a lot more unstable with her anger, and as such, all of her perks are designed around using that rage to the fullest, even if it ends up putting innocent bystanders in the crossfire. It is that concept alone that has made Spirit's perks so memorable, that even to this day, many fear facing any of them within the trial grounds. That being said, although Spirit's perks have made their mark in Dead by Daylight, you rarely ever find them within the average trial. I will admit you will find them much more compared to Oni's perks, but I digress. Within my Why No One Uses series, I follow a 2-2-4 rule set, where the perks for a character I look towards discussing need to have 2 perks that sit at 2% play rate or less, while the third perk must sit around 4% or lower. As you may suspect, this is the case with Spirit's perks on Nightlight.gg. Although they aren't official data, they are a good benchmark to work with. As for why I am bringing out my rule set out of the blue here, it is because there is one perk that I am sure that will be flooding my comments section on how popular it is for a particular character, and I don't have the patience for it today. In any case, I already have gone on long enough for the introduction, and I don't want to make a repeat like with Oni's video. So let's finally get into talking about Spirit's perks, why they aren't seen much, and what behavior can do to help boost their play rates.
Magical hats! Conceal the Dark Magician! He's under there somewhere, but which one?
Are you so desperate that you have your Dark Magician doing simple hat tricks?
It's not a trick, and it's not so simple. Your move, but you better think twice before you choose. Just do the math. 4 hats, only 25% chance you'll find the Dark Magician. The real question is, what else is hiding beneath those hats?
Of all 3 of Spirit's perks, this is by far the one that shows off its age the most. Hex Haunted Ground has the ability to convert 2 dull totems into hex totems at the start of the trial. If any survivor were to break either of the 2 hex totems, then all survivors are inflicted with Exposed for 60 seconds, and the second hex totem is reverted back into a dull totem. Back in the days of Yonder, Hex Haunted Ground was going through a bit of an identity crisis, because although the entire design screamed trap perk, people instead were using it for hex defense. The idea players had at the time was to utilize Hex Haunted Ground in conjunction with other main hex perks, such as Hex Ruin, and it left players in a guessing game situation. If they guessed wrong, then the whole team was hit with a potential one-shot for a minute, but if they guessed right, the killer disconnected and destroyed their PC with the nearby katana. Sadly for Hex Haunted Ground, but not so much for everyone else, its days as a hex defense perk would come to a crashing halt with the introduction of Hex Undying, along with the buffs to Hex Thrill the Hunt. On the plus side, it meant that Hex Haunted Ground was allowed to return to its initial concept as a trap perk, a very unique subclass within the game that behavior don't typically explore that much in recent years. Trap perks, as the name suggests, are perks that are designed around presenting the killer a particular reward for survivors going for the lure and detonating the perk's lethal effects. Great examples would be with Make Your Choice, Hex Retribution, Dragon's Grip, Hex Overture of Doom, and a few others, but you get the point. Hex Haunted Ground acts like a poster child of the subclass, because it perfectly reflects what makes the subclass so enticing, but also so painfully flawed. To start, we can actually use its history as a springboard for the perk's first problem. Because you see, the perk wasn't just used as a means to protect other hex totems. Instead, it was more like a parasitic relationship. But not the fun toxic kind like in the Venom movies. Instead, it's more like The Last of Us. Trap perks within Dead by Daylight tend to have very potent effects once a survivor trips their activation requirements. But the core issue with the subclass lies in how easy it is for survivors to trip the perk. When it comes to something like hex totems, the core philosophy of survivors has shifted over the years for higher MMR, because instead of instantly breaking totems, as according to the ancient scriptures, players instead try to figure out what hexes are on the board first. You can thank Father Time, along with the Plaything Penamento combo, for teaching players this new philosophy. And because of that, Hex Haunted Ground's ability to trigger has taken a hit. Players are now much more cautious because of Hex Haunted Ground's potential existence, and many players have learned to deal with particular hex totems and just leave them alone to waste less time for gen repair. As such, you cannot run Hex Haunted Ground alone, because although there is a chance that one random player will pop the totem, most survivors are going to try and figure out what the totem is first before the game ends in 1 minute. If you want players to be lured towards the trap, you will need to run other main hex totems to promote players to go for cleansing. But then you want some hex defense to keep the main totem alight. And now you see why the perks relationship is parasitic. It is all because of Hex Haunted Ground that your build is now locked into a shaman build, and if you try to replace any of the pieces in it, you threaten all the parts within the structure to fall apart like a Jenga tower. This is sadly an element many trap perks share, but Hex Haunted Ground in particular is extremely infamous for that reason. The second problem with Hex Haunted Ground is a much simpler issue compared to the first one, and that is the fact that not every killer is capable of utilizing the value that the perk can provide. Exposed as a status effect is limited only to killers who damage survivors through basic attacks, and considering how powerful it was on Nurse when her blinks registered as basic, let's be thankful behavior had been much more cautious about it. Also, can we just have a quick chat about Starstruck Nurse? The sheer fact it was allowed to exist as long as it did is absolutely dreadful, and the only positive thing about it was how fast the games ended. I am glad that behavior went with the smart direction of nerfing the problem child and not the perk, but to this day I will never forget the head trauma of that build. Luckily for many of us, most killers find themselves on the other side of that extreme coin of balance, as not every killer is blessed with the tools to break the game like Nurse. If anything, most of the killers within the game are designed to secure damage through special attacks, and as a result they are locked out from running Hex Haunted Ground. Additionally, the very few killers who are basic attack focused have to contend with the fact that Hex Haunted Ground works on a 1-minute timer, meaning that they have to be very quick to secure the snowball potential the perk is providing. As a result, you need to run a killer who is basic attack focused, but also has enough mobility to secure quick chases to build on the pressure Hex Haunted Ground is providing. Luckily, there are a few killers like that, such as Clown, Wraith, Houndmaster, Singularity, even Spirit herself. But this is a very small group of killers that realistically have other choices as well. In truth, the perk is brought down by the fact that there are so few killers who can make use of its value, but the final problem is truly the nail in the coffin for its low play rate. To best explain Hex Haunted Ground's final problem, I want to compare it to another trap perk within Dead by Daylight, and that is of course behavior's most well executed trap perk, Make Your Choice. Make Your Choice is a perk that I talked about long ago in my Why No One Uses video for Pig, and even after all of those years, the perk's effect has aged quite well for its subclass. The perk's effect activates once a survivor is unhooked and you are at least 32 meters away. The unhooking survivor screams and becomes exposed for 60 seconds, and Make Your Choice goes on a 60-second cooldown. What makes the perk so lethal, especially for the killers who love running the perk, is the simple fact that it can be activated multiple times in the trial. As a result, you might be capable of fetching every single exposed hit, or simply one, but you will always have a chance to convert the perk's effect into a snowball. Hex Haunted Ground is not like that, because once either of the two totems are cleansed, the perk is done. You have 1 minute to make value from the one-shot, or else the perk is gone for the rest of the trial. What makes this far more difficult is the amount of details you need to take account of, because there are a ton of elements that can hamper the value of Hex Haunted Ground. Take this clip as an example. I get the down on Lara Croft once Hex Haunted Ground is detonated, and I know where at least one of the survivors are hiding. I go towards that area and I find the Cheryl, who is injured at Killer Shack. If I were to stay on her, I am sure I would fetch the down, but because of Hex Haunted Ground, I have to leave her for a healthy survivor to secure the one-shot. Luckily, I end up finding the Claudette during this time, and I decide to go after her to secure the one-shot. But once I land the hit, it only injures her, because she was running Vigil, which reduced her exposed timer. In this one clip, I have shown at least 4 elements that makes the perk fall apart, and each one negatively influences the perk's power. You need to know where healthy survivors are to secure the snowball. You are forced to avoid taking chases on injured targets, else you waste precious time. Survivors can stealth to avoid getting one-tapped, and then survivor perks like Vigil can completely cripple your timer even further, or stealth perks can make detecting players even harder. What is even funnier is that there are other elements that can impede on Hex Haunted Ground's ability to function, and it is because of all of these elements combining together into the perfect storm that it all falls apart. Granted, there are moments where the perk can function, and you will feel very happy about it, but more often than not, it will completely fall apart. Before we get into talking about potential changes, let's quickly review the issues of Hex Haunted Ground one last time. The perk's nature of needing players to detonate its totem requires players to run very specific builds to support it. The effect it provides are limited in who can run it, and its effects is a one-time use that can easily fall apart. Back in the dark ages of Dead by Daylight, Hex Haunted Ground was absolutely a boogeyman of a perk to face, because most players did not expect to see it, and when they did, it absolutely frightened them out of their skin. Nowadays, that same effect can still be felt within lower MMR play, but as you get into higher MMR matches, most players just treat it like another day. Of all three of Spirit's perks, this one is something that I do believe behavior should look towards updating, as its effects are thematically quaint. A perk that reflects Spirit's lore of wanting revenge on her father, but that rage being reflected by the entity onto the survivors is a perfect thematic choice. But the true weakness of the perk is that its balance has not kept up over the years. As such, I have a few changes that I would recommend for Hex Haunted Ground, and because the only video shook up my typical rule set for perk changes, I have 3 choices for the perk instead of the usual 2. The first buff concept is to simply remove the extinguishing element of the perk, meaning that if a survivor were to cleanse either of the 2 Hex Haunted Ground totems, the second one still remains. This buff ends up tackling the third problem for Hex Haunted Ground, because now you have a second shot and making value from the perk's one shot. Additionally, the buff ends up returning a little part of its old identity as Hex Defense, as now you have a second trap totem that players could mistake as one of your main Hex totems. One last thing I need to mention, because I am sure there are people out there who unironically run this build, is the Hex Undying combo. It's me, I am unironically running this build. You see, Hex Undying has a goofy interaction with Hex Haunted Ground, where, if the Undying totem tanks the hit for Haunted Grounds, it will not only detonate the exposed effect, but it will still keep the second Hex alight, with the first one taking over Undying's totem. This means you can have Hex Haunted Ground detonating its exposed effect 2 times in a match, and with this buff, you now have a third time of activating the one-shot. Realistically though, this is a very goofy strategy, and you usually want Hex Undying protecting your other main Hex totems. But when this combo goes off, it feels absolutely delightful. Overall, a nice buff to help with the perk's consistency, and to help make its effects much more lethal for survivors who make repeated mistakes. The second buff concept for the perk is a much simpler change, that being to increase the duration of the exposed effect from 60 to 90 seconds. Similar to the first change concept, it ends up boosting the perk's consistency, along with increasing the threat level of the perk's trap effect, giving killers a much larger window to work around with. That being said, this is very much a different approach compared to the first change, as now you still have just one shot to fetch value from the perk, but it ends up being a tad bit healthier with the fact that survivors don't have to worry with one random trap hex being on the board. If I had to choose between the two, the first change is much more interesting from a design perspective, but the second one is a clean number change that helps the perk feel functional. In comparison to the first 2 changes, the third change concept instead goes towards an additive direction, attempting to boost the perk's power while not touching its other elements. In addition to its current effects, you now also gain Undetectable for 60 seconds once either of the Hex totems are destroyed. The idea of this change is to lean into the thematic design of the Onryo from Japanese mythology. Otherwise known as a vengeful spirit, the Onryo is a specter who has returned from the grave seeking vengeance. And although Hex Haunted Ground captures the vengeful element of Onryos, it fails to truly capture the spirit element. The idea of this buff is to not only enhance it for the killers who do love running it, but it is to also allow a wider variety of killers to weaponize its value. Undetectable in general is a fantastic status effect for the killer, as it allows even the slower killers to sneak up on players and have a potential hit. As such, a buff like this ends up making the perk Snowball feel even more impactful. I do think the numbers could be adjusted from 60 to 45 seconds for the exposed and undetectable, as this would be a nice compensation nerf for the added utility, but then again, we need to keep in mind how flimsy of a perk Hex Haunted Ground already is. In truth, I think it could get away with its current numbers, especially if Vigil remains unchanged like it is now. To end my thoughts on Hex Haunted Ground, I think it's pretty neat. The idea behind it is genuinely fascinating from a lore and gameplay design space, and of the 3 perks that Spirit brought, it has also been the least problematic. That being said, I believe it could get away with being a little more cruel, especially as the game has gotten faster and players have become much more careful to dodge its effects. In truth, it can at least function within the modern day, which is saying a lot considering many of the perks I typically cover in this series. But its flaws absolutely cause it to nosedive in popularity, and I think behavior could look towards reducing some of them.
Ow! Oh! Ow! What the hell is wrong with you?
Geez, sorry. It's a pretty standard stun, Homer.
Remember how I said there was going to be a very specific perk that I believed was going to flood the comment section of this video? Well, say hello to Spirit Fury! And I know there's bound to be at least 20 comments about this perk before people even get past the first minute mark. Going over Spirit Fury's effect, it activates once you break 2 pallets. And the next time you get pallet stunned, the entity breaks that pallet for you, and Spirit Fury resets. The reason why I suspect many will talk about Spirit Fury in the comment section is because not only is it a fan favorite for many killer players because of its genuinely cool effect, but it has become a very popular choice for one killer, that being the Legion. You see, Spirit Fury isn't picky on how you break pallets. As long as you break them, you gain tokens. Legion's iridescent button ends up capitalizing on that design philosophy unlike anything else in the game, because while running it, you break any pallet you vault over. As a result, many Legion players find themselves utilizing that add-on, along with Julie's mixtape, to clear the board and keep pressure on the survivors through chase. If anything, the Eerie Legion playstyle is the only strategy that many utilize nowadays, and the reason why is because it is the only build that makes Legion an actual threat, and not a walking cosmetic like Trapper or Skull Merchant. That being said, although Spirit Fury has now grafted itself onto Legion, that does not mean the perk is popular for other killer players, and we are here to talk about why that is the case. Starting with the perk's first problem, it is actually a similar issue to that of Hex Haunted Ground, that being the fact that Spirit Fury has a parasitic relationship with another perk, but at least this one is the fun toxic kind. If you have ever seen a player utilizing Spirit Fury, there is no doubt you have seen Enduring added into the mix as well, and that is for a very good reason. Enduring makes it so pallet stuns are reduced by 50%, and as a result it ends up being a very nice consistency booster for the perk. As you are getting stunned for less time, you can use it to either break the pallet sooner, or, more evidently, utilize Spirit Fury's pallet break element to go for a swing on the survivor to secure damage. This has been the combo for the perk since day 1 of its release, and the 2 perks have been a match made in heaven. That being said, while Enduring is capable of functioning all by itself, Spirit Fury completely falls apart the moment it is alone. A great example of this is in this clip. I managed to build up Spirit Fury, and the Claudette lands the stun, popping the perk's effects. Unfortunately, because I don't have Enduring, I cannot secure the hit, and she manages to make the window. Although she ends up making a misplay near the end of the clip, this example is still a great example to show the perk's weakness without Enduring. It is Enduring's ability to increase the stun recovery that makes the combo so deadly. So, when you remove it from the equation, the perk ends up feeling flat compared to when you do run it. Another big issue with the combo is the fact that you have to run 2 perks in order for it to properly function, and so your build paths are limited. Although it is not as bad compared to Hex Haunted Ground, which completely limits you to Hex Totems and Hex Totems only, it is still a heavy price that some killers are not willing to pay. Moving on to the second problem, this is funnily enough one of the few things that Spirit did inherit from her ancient ancestor, and that is the fact that Spirit Fury has a lack of subtlety. Similar to how you can tell how many brain cells are in a Sable player's head, many players can tell when the killer is running Spirit Fury. As I mentioned with Legion, everyone knows he will be running the End Fury combo purely because of Eerie Button. Because the moment they see the killer break a pallet from vaulting, They know what's in store. Then there is the moment you stun the killer and gain Oblivious because of Nemesis, and now you start to hyperventilate because you now know the full build. But I'll get to that point when I talk about Rancor. Additionally, killer actions like not breaking good pallets or swinging through pallets willy-nilly are other actions of showing off that the killer has Spirit Fury, because they are trying to utilize the Spirit Fury they currently have online, and they want to save the pallets for later to build it up. Now you may wonder why the lack of subtlety for Spirit Fury is a problem for the perk. Well, it's because once a survivor knows that the End Fury combo is online, they now know how to deal with it. Survivors now suddenly start to pre-drop pallets, they don't greet stuns, and in the case of Legion, they spam vault pallets to prevent them from vaulting, denying access to utilizing Eerie Button. This is the biggest weakness for Spirit Fury, because the perk has been in the game for quite literally years, and players have learned how to deal with the perk. As such, when the killer is busy promoting it, like how the Black Veil promotes the good word, of course survivors will know what is happening and how to deal with it. Now let's get back to that small statement I made about saving pallets, as that is a good lead into the third problem. You see, compared to other chase-focused perks within the game, Spirit Fury is pretty slow. You need to spend time breaking pallets to build it up, try to get stunned to detonate the perk, and then repeat the whole song and dance afterwards. Additionally, you need pallets to build the perk up, and as the trial goes on, you are running lower on resources. Meanwhile, something like Bamboozle blocks a window from vaulting it, or Rapid Brutality grants you haste for landing a basic attack by removing Bloodlust, both of which being able to pop at any time, every time. I will admit that they don't fit the specific niche that Spirit Fury follows, but that issue of speed is something not every player is willing to deal with. In fact, it's another reason why the Eerie Button combo on Legion is so popular with Spirit Fury, as you speed up the process of building the perk up while maintaining chase pressure. Sadly, not every killer can resolve that speed issue for Spirit Fury, and even fewer can fully utilize it once players start to pre-drop. Going over the flaws as review, Spirit Fury's need of enduring reduces its ability to be utilized in diverse builds. Its tells, whether it be what perks are in play or how the killer acts, allows survivors to know when it's in play and can proactively counter it, and there exist other alternatives that are harder to counter or easier to detonate. In truth, Spirit Fury is a very difficult perk to talk about when it comes to balance, because on one hand the perk can absolutely feel boring to face. All the killer has to do is run through a pallet with no thoughts whatsoever, and they get a free hit with the End Fury combo. And with Legion removing one step of the equation by vaulting to trigger Eerie Button, it ends up feeling even less skill expressive. That being said, the perk's effect as a whole is something completely different in the game, as seeing a pallet explode is both flashy and thematically cool. Additionally, counterplay options have only gotten better for survivors as the years have gone on, as players now know what to look out for and how to dodge the End Fury combo hit. In truth, there is a ton of nuance to the discussion of this perk, and I don't think it needs any changes. That being said, I did say I want to challenge myself in my Oni video with theory crafting potential changes, regardless of if I think a perk is balanced or not. And considering Spirit is family, I guess I have to give the same treatment. There is realistically only one buff concept that I believe would be mostly fine, and that would be to add an additional effect to Spirit Fury. Upon being stunned while Spirit Fury is active, not only does the pallet break, but your stun recovery is increased by 25%. This stun recovery modifier is removed if there are other positive stun recovery modifiers when calculated with diminished returns. The diminished return system was truly a blessing in disguise from behavior, as not only does it allow them to buff up perks without breaking the game with overloaded combos, but it also allows for behavior to experiment with a few other elements. Stun recovery has always been an element that behavior don't typically meddle with all that often, and for very good reason. Certain killers can make use of a faster stun recovery unlike any other, such as Krasu and Chucky when they could vault over pallets in breakneck speeds, or even Spirit or Wraith who can consistently stay on players with their mobility. As such, behavior don't typically enjoy adding positive stun recovery modifiers into the game, as it has the potential to combine with Enduring and make stuns on the survivor and feel pointless. That being said, this buff looks at this potential issue and resolves it by removing the positive modifier when combined with Enduring. As such, the buff is purely for running Spirit Fury alone, and allowing some build flexibility. But if players want to run the End Fury combo, then the buff does nothing to enhance it. In truth, I don't even think a change like this is necessary, but it is still something I wanted to bring up, as behavior could get away with changes like this on other stat modifiers that diminished returns does not fully resolve. Overall, Spirit Fury is a solid perk. The identity of it is truly unique within the game, as its effects are explosive and it ends up feeling really fun when it goes off. Additionally, there is enough information that is presented to survivors to know when it is in play, and they have the tools necessary to disrupt it. I will admit that it is absolutely not that fun to play against, especially with the Eerie Button Legion playstyle, but I believe this is more so a larger issue of Legion's base design rather than the perk itself. Of all three of Spirit's perks, this is the one that I believe doesn't need any alterations. And realistically, it could be left alone for years, and it still would have its player base who love its identity.
I told you they hate you.
No, they said they just needed more time.
Time? They destroyed your life! How much time before we take revenge?
But they're my friends.
I'm your only friend.
No.
No!
There's always one perk on every character that people think of when you say their name. When you say Hag, people think of Hex Ruin. When you bring up Quentin, you think of Vigil. When you bring up Brick, you think of Garbage. Just like everyone else, Spirit has one perk that everyone remembers, but what makes it stand out compared to any other killer perk is its thematic design. Each time a generator is completed, you see a bubble aura location of each survivor for 3 seconds. Meanwhile, the Obsession sees your aura for 3 seconds. Once the final generator is completed, the Obsession becomes exposed for the remainder of the trial, and you gain the ability to Mori the Obsession. Funnily enough, this perk's old name used to be Hatred, which you can hear within the release trailer for Shattered Bloodlines. But whoever decided to change the name to Rancor deserves a gold star. The perk's effect is unlike any other within the game, as before the final player Mori system was added into Dead by Daylight, the only ways you could Mori a player was with Memento Mori offerings, or with a fully stacked Hex Devour Hope. In essence, this perk is a perfect reflection of Spirit's rage, of how her hatred for a single person is so visceral, so pure, that she is willing to execute them regardless of the trial's usual rules. God, what a great perk. So why don't more people run it? Well, that's the funny thing, because although the perk's effects sound absolutely insane, the perk's potential of activating is a very big flaw for it. You see, Rancor is an endgame perk, meaning that its effects are mostly locked until the final generator pops. As a result, the perk could have the potential of not doing anything for the whole trial, because you played well enough that the survivors never get to see the endgame. This in general is a very big discussion point for all the endgame perks within Dead by Daylight, because although they have some of the most potent effects within the game, many players don't enjoy running them because of the potential that they remain dead in hand. Many players want consistent value, and that is a very big weakness that most endgame perks suffer from. As we are talking about consistency, this leads into the second problem with Rancor, that being the fact that you need to keep the Obsession alive to fetch its Mori effects, and more importantly, know where they are once the perk detonates. You see, Rancor reveals your aura to the Obsession each time a generator is completed for 3 seconds, meaning they are quite literally told, you are gonna die soon from the perk. As a result, the Obsession is most likely going to stealth around the map during the endgame, not only to deny Rancor, but also to waste your own time, as you are trying to look for them to fetch the free one-shot and Mori. Additionally, because Rancor only works on the Obsession, you need to keep them alive, and that can result in some really messy situations for you. As the Obsession is allowed to survive scot-free, not only are they able to repair generators, but they can also heal teammates, complete secondary objectives, be an annoyance. You get the idea. That being said, Behavior did realize that this particular pain point can absolutely harm the perk's chances of popularity, and so they look towards outside support, specifically with the other Yamaoka. Nemesis has the effect of applying the Obsession title to any new survivor who pallet or lock or stuns the killer or blinds them. Additionally, anytime the Obsession title swaps, you see the new Obsession aura for 8 seconds, and they become oblivious for 60 seconds. I talked about Nemesis in the Oni video I did a couple of days ago, so if you want to hear my thoughts on it, go there. But for now, let's explain why it became a popular perk combo for Rancor. Also, that's the wrong picture. The exposed effect of Rancor does not work with a timer like with other exposed effects. Instead, it is a fixed status ailment so long as the player is the Obsession. This means that you could simply get stunned in the endgame, and now the responsible survivors put in a literal fire. Additionally, because Nemesis reveals their aura for 8 seconds and applies Oblivious onto them, it makes them trying to read you in chase much more harder, and you gain information of where they are going. Of all the Obsession swapping perks within the game, Nemesis has always been the most popular with Rancor, but this was almost changed with Game Afoot during its PTB state. I talked about this interaction in my Why No One Uses video on Skull Merchant's perks, but the TLDR of it was that Game Afoot read the most chased survivor as the Obsession in conjunction with the labeled Obsession. As a result, you had 2 survivors who could be one-shot and moried, and this particular bug resulted in Wraith and Spirit players being AFK until the endgame to secure free moris. It was a very cheap playstyle that Behavior didn't want for the perk, and also was one not intended whatsoever, so Behavior went to quickly patching it. That being said, even with these goofy interactions, Obsession swapping does not fix all the problems for Rancor, but it does at least reduce the second issue. And if I didn't mention that, it would be the biggest mistake of my YouTube career. The final problem with Rancor is one that I have already mentioned, specifically with Hex Haunted Ground, and that is the fact that not every killer is capable of utilizing its effects. Although the Mori effect is universal, and any killer can make use of that, the Exposed effect is a completely different story. As I said, Exposed can only activate from basic attacks, and as a result, certain ability-focused killers are locked out from utilizing this element of the perk. Additionally, because the perk provides the Obsession and aura read each time a generator is completed, many killer players look towards stealth killers to deny that information from leaking out. Wraith in particular is a very popular Rancor user, because his kit provides everything Rancor loves and more. Undetectable to hide the aura read, mobility to catch up to the Obsession, basic attack focus for damage, and most importantly, some of the best add-ons at denying survivors stealth or to enhance your own chase power. It is all genuinely fantastic resources that helps to boost Rancor even further, but this is all limited onto one killer, and not everyone is interested in playing the Bing Bong Boy. There are a few other killers who can make use of Rancor's effects, such as Spirit, Houndmaster, and Clown, but they each tend to miss out on certain things that Rancor likes, and even fewer killers have the resources necessary to fully execute on Rancor's value. The Mori is nice, but not every player is willing to have a perk at half power when active compared to a perk at full power at almost every moment. Finishing up our talk about Rancor, let's review the faults and discuss potential changes. Rancor's identity as an endgame perk means it has the potential to never fetch value. Its focus on the Obsession can cause much more harm than good, even with outside support, and its design limits who can fully utilize its effects. Similar to Spirit Fury, Rancor is a perk that is very well executed. Behavior have had no reason to try and change the perk, except when they attempted game-wide changes like with the initial Mori system. Additionally, Rancor is a very deadly perk when it is allowed to go full throttle, which we all saw with Game Afoot's initial PTB state. As a result, Behavior tend to be very careful when it comes to making any support or changes for Rancor, and it is fully understandable why. As such, I don't believe the perk needs any major changes. But as I challenged myself to at least present one change for every perk, I am going to present the change I recommended years long ago. In my old Rancor video, I recommended that behavior change the Survivor aura read into a bubble aura read, and I believe older me had some logic behind the madness. The key difference between bubble auras and normal aura reads is the information that you fetch, because typical aura reading is extremely precise. Meanwhile, bubble auras are much more general with their information. This ends up being a really nice change for most killers, as it removes the survivor's ability to figure out what they are doing or where they are going, but it also simply imposes on Swift players information. They already know that you are running Rancor, but with this change, they now cannot tell where your exact location is or what you are doing. That being said, this ends up being a nerf specifically for stealth killers, as they cannot hide the information anymore. But to be quite honest with you, this does not change all that much. Although the Rancor target does get information that the perk is on the table, they aren't fetching groundbreaking information on you. Additionally, this change ends up being nicer for average play, because now survivors won't be jump scared by a random exposed effect from a Wraith. No one enjoys it when Noah did it, and that logic has not changed with Rancor. Closing my thoughts on Spirit's perks, they are quite simply neat. Behavior did a fantastic job at designing their gameplay around Spirit's core thematic of spiteful rage, and their balance have been one of the few that has needed the least amount of adjustments. In fact, if you looked at their balance history, not a single one of them has gotten changed, with the exception of Rancor, but none went through as they were changes to prepare for potential game-wide updates. That being said, just because they have been stable for ages, does not mean they don't deserve a touch-up, especially for Hex Haunted Ground with the addition of new Hex support. I will admit that I have my biases for Spirit, as playing against her is like listening to nails on a chalkboard ASMR, but that does not change the fact that she is still very cool, even if she could use some clothing. Good luck in your trials, everyone. You will need it, especially if you are against a $500 headset warrior.
Is this your house, Mikaela? I love what you have done with the place, so rustic feeling.
This isn't my house, Sable. It's just a shed. I am just crashing at this place until I get enough energy from Hero's videos to continue pestering him. Besides, he won't shut up about Yu-Gi-Oh now after I offered him some cards.
Well that's a shame. If you want, you could stay at my place, and we could play games, and drink hot cocoa, and gossip about the other survivors, and we could make out, and...
Not at all, you nutcase. I've seen your place, and it makes this shed look like a vacation resort. Actually, Sable, I changed my mind. I'll stay at your place, but only if you stay here for a minute.
Oh, of course, Mikaela, I would do anything for you, Mikaela. La-dee-dee-dum. Oh, hello there, who are you?
That was a close one. I didn't pay my rent.